everybody. So this is personality, and this one might be a little bit long just because there's a lot of different vocab words to it, and there's just different theories for personality. So main thing about personality is the definition is that it is a person's pattern of thinking, feeling, and acting. The key word being pattern. So if you are extroverted one time only, and then you're kind of quiet all the other times, then we would not say that you're extroverted. But if you're extroverted in all different areas, school, with friends, with teachers, social gathering, yada, yada, family, then you'd be considered an extrovert as part of your personality. Okay, so who is this guy? It is Freud. He's kind of the father of personality theory. So Freud's early exploration into the unconscious is that he would use hypnosis and then free association. So free association is pretty much where I say a word and the first thing that pops into your head. It's what we did in class where you asked your peers, I think it was like tree, hand, something else, and the first thing they said was going to give a lot of insight into their personality, supposedly. So his whole thing was, getting someone to lie down on the couch, tell me how you're feeling, let's analyze your dreams, and all of that is called psychoanalysis. Okay, so this is our internal drives. This is going to be your id. So we have id, ego, and superego. The id is going to be your unconscious drive. A lot of times it's going to satisfy basic sexual and aggressive urges. It operates on the pleasure principle because the main thing is that they want immediate gratification. So we talked about babies. So babies really follow on their id because they don't know better. They don't really necessarily know what's right and wrong. So they want to be fed right now, change me right now, feed me right now, love me right now. It's regardless of where you are at, whether you're wearing a nice outfit or if you're in a quiet space, babies just want everything right now. So all of their drives are going to be considered id. Okay, then you have the complete opposite of id, which is going to be your your super ego. So this is going to be the moral principle, the part of you that has a lot of morals and ethics, doing the right thing, so not cheating, doing your homework first instead of going out. So it's going to be like the good part of you. So if we're to look at devils and angels, if you believe in that, your id would be kind of the devil on the shoulder saying, do it, it feels good. The super ego is going to basically be the part of you that says, no, we should delay gratification, do what's right. Most of the time, it's really hard for us to float on super ego or just id. So most of the time we're on ego. So that's our ego strength. So this is the part of you that is based out of reality. So it's the executive boss between the id and the super ego. So since we all know reality can suck sometimes, so, again, being in quarantine, the reality is this is kind of what we're having to deal with. And with that reality, there comes a lot of anxiety, depression, worry, fear, panic. And so our unconscious drives needs to kind of protect us from reality. So then we create something called defense mechanisms. So this is the ego's protective method to help us reduce anxiety and sometimes essentially distort the actual reality that is happening within us. Oftentimes we're not really aware that they are occurring, but if you know yourselves really well and you know all these defense mechanisms, then you're better able to pinpoint when this is happening. Okay, so out of all of our defense mechanisms, repression is the big one. This is the one, it's Freud's baby. He's pretty much saying that a lot of times we repress things that are really painful and anxiety provoking. So it could be something as, severe as, childhood traumas, or it can be something like missing a test. So even though it's been on the board and you've been told there's going to be a test, Freud would say that maybe you have so much anxiety about it that you've now repressed the fact that you forgot to study. Okay, another one, regressing back to a more infantile stage. So this is when we whine, Mom, Dad, I don't want to do that, but why? Or we throw a tantrum, or I doubt any of you guys still suck your thumb, but if you did, that would be kind of like a comfort for you. So it's kind of you guys going back to an earlier infantile stage. Okay, this one is where we're gonna do the opposites. So reaction formation. So I have a crush on you, but that gives me anxiety because I'm afraid of rejection. So instead of being nice to you, I'm going to pull your hair or tease you or be sarcastic, because that would be less anxiety provoking than just to be vulnerable and tell you, hey, like I'm interested, because you might say no. Or this is actually being really nice to someone that you can't stand. So maybe the fact that you don't like someone actually brings up a lot of anxiety for you. So instead of just being, I don't know, not interested in being their friend, you are extra nice to them. Okay, this is where we are going to put our own insecurities onto other people. So we're going to project that onto others. So we are going to disguise our own threatening impulses and we're going to attribute them to other people. So let's say you are having doubts in your marriage or your relationship and you're already kind of thinking about maybe cheating or leaving that relationship. That can bring up a lot of anxiety with you. So then instead of just owning that, we are going to attribute it to our partner and blame them for wanting to cheat or looking at other people, etc., etc. Another one can be, let me think. For example, like my husband's supposed to have, what I deem to be an uncomfortable conversation with someone. And so I keep asking him, like, aren't you afraid of having that conversation? Like, it's so confrontational. Doesn't that make you anxious? And he's like, no, it's totally fine. So then I have to say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm projecting my own anxieties about how I would feel if I had to have that conversation onto him, even though he feels totally fine and is like, whatever. Okay, then this one might have been some of you guys, my seniors, or it could be anything if you've been ever rejected from somewhere or you didn't get in. So we sometimes will rationalize things. So maybe some of you guys didn't get into the college that was your first choice, which is totally okay. And so some ways to make ourselves feel better can be we can adjust things. So maybe it might be, yes, that's a really good school, but, it's okay because it was kind of far away, or the drive wasn't the greatest, or it's in a city that I'm not really that fond of. And so this other school that I did get into is actually better for me, etc., etc. Okay, this is where we are going to shift our unacceptable impulses onto a safer outlet. So this is called displacement. So let's say you're really upset with everything that's happening, like everything with the COVID. So we can't really necessarily fight that much against whoever is mandating all of this stuff, or like whoever, is in charge. And so instead you might throw your phone, or you might be really frustrated, or let's say you're really mad at mom and dad. And so instead of yelling at them, you might yell at your dog or your best friend, someone that might be a little bit safer than the person that's actually bothering you. Or let's say your parents are really frustrated at work and they yell at you guys instead of their boss. You are the safer outlet. So they're going to displace their uncomfortable impulses onto you guys. Okay, this is where we're going to rechannel impulses to something that is more socially acceptable or approved. So Freud would say, excuse me, guys. Freud would say, for some people, they may not be comfortable with homosexual feelings or their sexuality. So then when they're playing a sport that is very like close contact, so like we're just going to use football players for now. Sometimes they will, when they do a good play, they're going to like smack them on the butt. And so that to Freud would be very sexual based. And so instead of just saying, hey, I like to grab guys and their butts just for fun because I'm attracted to them, you might just do it in a more socially approved way, like through sports. Okay, another one might be, let's say you really enjoy, like hurting animals, which actually is like a negative connotation in our society, obviously. And so you might then subside that urge by turning it something more socially approved. Such as becoming a veterinarian, because you can still kind of cut open animals and deal with all of that, but it's not in a cruel way. It's more being helpful. So then it's going to be more socially approved than just being like, hi, I like to torture animals, which actually would be bad. Okay, so according to Freud, we might have something called fixation. So this is going to be leading into your psychosexual stages. So fixation is basically the lingering focus of pleasure-seeking energies at an earlier psychosexual stage. So according to him, where conflicts are unresolved. Okay, so we have 5 stages. Make sure you know all 5. Okay, the first one, as a baby, this is the oral stage. It's between the ages of 0 to a year and a half. The pleasure center is in the mouth, hence the oral stage. Babies are going to want to put everything in there. They're going to suck, bite, chew, lick, all the things. So according to Freud, if you, let's say your mom was, oops, I skipped it. So for most babies, it's going to be coming from a bottle for food or a mom's nipple. And so if a mother weans her child off of that too soon, so that means basically taking baby off of a bottle or off of their mother's breast for too soon, for whatever reason, then babies might get fixated in that stage. And so then now as adults, we always want something in our mouths. So gum chewing, vaping, chewing on pen caps, eating ice, liking texture, like, peanuts or yada yada. Okay, second stage is going to be the anal stage. So about a year and a half to about 3 years, most kids are trying to start potty train. And so the pleasure zone is going to be bowel control, so how much you can hold it. And then that control is then going to lead into our current lives. So 2 different types for anal stage. The first one is anal retentive. So let's say you were someone that was really good at controlling your bowel movements as a child. That excessive control back then basically can turn you into an anal retentive type A controlling person now. Let's say you were a baby that just kind of pooped and peed everywhere and you're just like, whatever. Maybe now as adults, you guys are more anal expulsive, meaning that you tend to be more unregulated with your emotions, messy, and careless. Okay, then his most controversial stage is going to be the phallic stage between 3 and 6 years. The pleasure area is going to be in the genitals. It's also why a lot of kids will touch themselves, and that might seem weird to us adults, but it's actually very normal. This is also kind of where they're going to explore different body parts with opposite people or same gendered people. Like, what is that? Why does mom have that? Why does daddy have that? Yada, yada. So according to Freud, he's saying that all of us have gone through incestual feelings. And so we have 2 things called the Oedipus and Electra complexes. So these 2 complexes are very controversial. Again, Freud has no scientific backing to any of his theories, but he's still incredibly popular because, it is controversial and it's interesting, and it's just something to talk about. So the Oedipus complex, which some of you guys read when you were, I think, sophomores, basically says that, Oedipus basically killed his father, married his mother, and then had babies with her. So Laius and Jocasta, etc., etc. So I think Freud took that and made it into this. So according to Freud, all of you boys, at some point when you were younger, all you wanted was to possess your mother, and you wanted to get rid of your father, so that he was your rival. And so Oedipus would say that, obviously now that's taboo and incestual. So now as adults, we're still fixated in that stage. So then a lot of times boys will marry partners that are very similar to mom, or girls will marry people that are similar to their dads, whether that's good or bad. Okay, the opposite of this for applying to women is going to be the Electra complex. So pretty much girls, you wanted to get rid of your mom and marry daddy. Okay, then the 4th stage is going to be the latency stage. So anytime you hear the word latent, you want to think of the word hidden. We've talked about latency stage when it came to dreaming. So this was like the hidden meanings of your dreams. We also talked about latency in the learning chapter with cognitive mapping and Tolman with the rats in the maze, and that we actually had a latent cognitive map of our environment. Okay, and this one is pretty much around 6 to about puberty. Freud is saying that we have dormant sexual feelings, that we just kind of start hanging out with our own gendered friends. We're more focused on school rather than sexual feelings, and so it became dormant. And then sometimes some of us thought that the opposite gender had cooties. All of us now are in the genital stage. So this is puberty until death, the maturation of sexual interest, which is what all of you guys are experiencing now. Okay, so Freud was huge on projective tests. So again, this is you projecting your internal motives and urges without even knowing onto an ambiguous stimuli. So this one was called the TAT, which is the thematic apperception test, where we give you an ambiguous stimuli, which is this random picture, and then you have to create a story, which we did in class. And whatever your story is about this boy or this picture, according to Freud, that is you projecting your internal feelings onto this picture. And then it can give you a lot of insight. The one we did, which is also really famous, is the Rorschach ink blot test. So supposedly whatever you see in this ambiguous stimuli is very telling of what is happening to you internally. Okay, then we also watched that video about all the different things where if we say one word, we mean one word, but then we say another. Oops, Freud would say that's really meaningful, so that's called a Freudian slip. So this is an error in speech, memory, or physical action that comes from the unconscious. So a very common one is for people to say the word orgasm instead of the word organism when they're reading something. And so Freud would say, wow, like, what are you really thinking about? Okay, then we have your Neo-Freudians. Neo-Freudians, they supported some of his ideas and then built upon them, but they were actually very against the whole idea of a lot of like the sexual or aggressive urges. They were more supportive of like the unconscious things and just some of the attachments that he talked about. So we have Adler, Horney, and Jung, or Jung, or however you want to pronounce that. Okay, so Alfred Adler is probably only going to get asked about one thing, and that is the inferiority complex. So he believes that we're all driven to not feel inferior, that we all want to feel superior, and the way we do that is for some of us, we can hurt other people, we are bullies, we can put them down, so then that way we feel more superior. Or we might be the person that's the class clown, or the one that's really quick-witted. Some people would say that some men who drive really big trucks have really small other things. So these are all kind of ways to beat the inferiority that we might feel. So that's called the inferior complex. It's very Alfred Adler-like. Okay, then we have Karen Horney. She was all about childhood and our attachments to our parents, and not trying to feel helpless. So we have this desire for love and security, and a lot of times this desire that we need can become so neurotic that we have other ways of showing that. So some of us become really compliant, so very submissive, saying sure, in order to saying yes to everything so that way we can keep someone's love. Some of us might be really controlling and dominant and aggressive, and then some of us might just withdraw and just do everything on our own and never asking for help. Okay, then we have Carl Jung, and the only thing he really ever gets asked about is the collective unconscious. That we all have this like shared inherited well of memory traces that are kind of like archetypes. So, when we think of a stepmom, some people think evil, or, a wise man is someone that's older. A mother is supposed to be nurturing. A hero is like a young male, etc., etc. Okay, so all of that was Freudian or psychodynamic. So now we move on to humanistic. So again, refresher. Humanistic is going to be the ring finger on your hand because it's all about love and self-actualization, whereas psychodynamic is going to be your thumb, which is looking into the past and the unconscious. Okay, so we have your two people, which is Maslow and Rogers. So Maslow always gets credit for the self-actualization and the pyramid of needs, or the hierarchy of needs. So again, reviewing that, okay? Our most basic need is biological or physiological, food, elimination of waste, water, Trying to draw a B there, biological. Okay, then we need to feel safety. So having warmth, having shelter. Then we want to feel love and belongingness. Then we want to be respected and have esteem. And then we can self-actualize. And then the top one right now, the newer one, is transcendence. So self-transcendence. So according to him, it's a process of fulfilling our highest potential. And instead of focusing on all the negative things, like Freud, he wanted to focus on the healthy people. So according to Rogers, Rogers believed in age. Okay, remember what age is. He believed that we all were like little acorns needing, instead of like sun and water to grow, we needed like these things to be able to grow it into a healthy individual. So we needed to have acceptance, genuineness, and empathy. So age. Okay. He also said that genuineness is basically our ability to be open with our feelings, to be super authentic and transparent. So not always putting up this front or a facade, because the more authentic we are, the more people will feel that we're genuine, and then that allows them to be genuine, and then your friendships can be very genuine and very open. Okay, acceptance is having unconditional positive regard. It's an attitude of respecting you and accepting you regardless of your mistakes. So parents who love their kids regardless of their grades, their trophies, etc. Okay, then empathy is being able to listen, share, and understand and mirror feelings and reflecting their meanings. So being very attuned to how you're feeling, how other people are feeling, and being able to have essentially emotional intelligence is going to help us be able to be healthier individuals. Okay, so the thing that you guys are constantly supposed to be asking yourselves during this time, and if you're not, that's okay too, but it does build self-awareness, is asking the question, who am I? And so that's the whole point of that, is that if you are asking yourselves, who are you, you're going to be able to have a better self-concept, because nobody can really know you if you don't really know yourself. And so it's trying to get you to have a sense of self-awareness. So then when you are engaging in relationships and connections with people, that people are getting the true you and accepting you, and you can accept yourself as well. Okay, so then that was humanistic. Moving on to trait perspective. So trait perspective is all about just listing out your traits. And so oftentimes we're going to take a personality test like the Myers-Briggs, like INFJ, ENFJ, ISTP, or taking the Enneagram test. Sometimes there's like a strengths quest test. And so anything that makes you fill out like who you are as a person would be considered a personality inventory. Okay, the first person that came up with this was Gordon Allport. He is the father of trait theory. He essentially said that there was like over 18,000 traits, which is like so many. And so he believed in the internal and external forces. So genotype is going to be an internal force. So kind of like inside, kind of like genetics, if you want to think about it that way. It relates to how a person retains information and uses it to then interact with the external world. So it's you then going out to the external. Whereas phenotype are externals. It's where how does the outside world and the surroundings is accepted by us as the individuals inside. Okay, then we have Hans Eysenck. So he came up with this pie, that there's 4 parts. He was saying, 18,000 traits is too many. So he just wanted to list the main 4. So we're either unstable or stable, or introverted or extroverted. So if you are here, you'd be considered a stable introvert. If you're up here, you're an unstable introvert. All the time society will value extroverts, but if you're an unstable extrovert, you may not be very successful, or there are just things that you have to work on. And just because you're an introvert doesn't mean that's necessarily a bad or good thing either. Ideally, we're trying to aim for more stability rather than instability. Okay, then the Big 5. So our acronym for the Big 5 was either canoe or ocean, whichever word makes you happy. Okay, so we have canoe here. Oopsie, hopefully you guys remember these. Okie dokie. Okay, so conscientiousness. So how organized or disorganized are you? Like basically how much do you pay attention to detail? Are you impulsive or are you really disciplined? Agreeableness is how well do you get along with other people? Are you really trusting or really suspicious? Do you work really well in groups, or are you the one that's always kind of causing, I guess, more conflict? So how agreeable you are is a personality trait. Then how neurotic you are, which is your emotional stability. Are you anxious? Are you calm? Do you freak out, or do you remain pretty stable? And then openness, how open are you to new ideas, experiences, creativity? Extroversion is how sociable you are. So canoe or ocean. Okay, then we have the MMPI. Do you guys remember what the MMPI stands for? What state is it? What does it stand for? Okay, it's the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory. It is the most widely used personality test. Oftentimes in the past, it was used for screening purposes for mental illness. And so I think I showed you guys my MMPI from grad school. It was the one that had all the little bubbles, and it was like 500 something questions. And it was basically a true false. And so what it looked like was that it would tell you how high you scored on things like anxiety, depression, antisocial. How often do you lie? Basically, meaning like, are you trying to answer questions on the test well, so then you're presented well? So a lot of times, big companies might use an MMPI to screen out certain types of applicants. So my encouragement to you is if you're ever given an MMPI, just be super honest with it, because it's better to just be honest than to get flagged on the inventory that you were trying to look better than you really are. Okay, this one is the which is not MMPI, it's the Myers-Briggs, which we have the 4 letters. You're either extroverted or introverted. Okay, you're either a sensory person or you are intuitive. You're either a thinker or a feeler. You're either a perceiver or a judger. And then you get your 4-letter combo, and then you can look that up. So this one is an INFJ or an ESTP. Okay, last theory. I don't know if you guys can tell, but my throat is getting tired. Okay, so then the social cognitive perspective. Okay, it is Bandura. So remember, he is all about modeling and observing people in your environment. So social cognitive theory, and his other theory is the social learning theory. So that's SLT. So us learning from models. Social cognitive theory stems from that in the sense that behaviorism and personality stems from the fact of how we interact with the world around us. So it's just like interaction between environment and us and our environment. Okay, social cognitive theory. Oh my gosh. So sorry, guys. I normally lecture on these over a period of 4 days, not all in one sitting. Okay, so reciprocal determinism is pretty much the interacting influences between personality and environmental, and there's different components to that. Okay, so the first part is going to be, oh no, here comes my dog. Sorry. Go with it. So the first part of how we interact with our environment is different people choose different environments. So the TV you watch, the friends you hang out with, the music you listen to, were all chosen by you, your disposition. And then after you choose the environment, then it also shapes you. So let's say you like watching the cooking channel. So that's you, your personality, you like watching cooking. So then now your environment is watching cooking, but then because you're watching the cooking channel, you now are going to start cooking these recipes. So then that then shapes you becoming more of a chef. So this whole interaction pattern. Okay, also our personalities help create the very situations in which we react. So if I already expect someone to be annoyed with me or angry with me, then I might then give them the cold shoulder. But because I gave them the cold shoulder, now they actually are angry and annoyed with me. So it's like this, again, this interaction between us and the environment and us. Okay, Okay, then we have different controls. So we have external and internal. External locus of control is the perception that chance or outside forces beyond one's personal control is basically determining one's fate. So if you're very external locus of control like, it can be harder to pull ourselves out of difficult situations. So for example, during COVID right now, one of the biggest things that we're teaching our clients and people is, you know what, there's so many things outside of our control, like, you know, health, weather, nature, the government, all of that stuff. If we keep focusing on that, then it becomes really hard for us to feel safe and not anxious. So the whole idea is what can you focus on? What do you have control over? You have control over when you wake up. You have control over exercising. You have control over your diet. You have control over how much you reach out to your friends, do your homework. So if we focus more on what we can control, then the external stuff might have a lesser power over us. But if we constantly have an external locus of control, it can be kind of discouraging. So ideally, we would want to have an internal locus of control, is that we get to control one's own fate. Yes, none of us wanted this, right? None of us thought school was going to be canceled. And it sucks. It does. Like, I hate the fact that I have to lecture to a computer screen rather than all of your faces. And we miss you guys too as well. But the thing is, we need to figure out how can we gain some of our control back. And so when we look back on this time in a few months, you know, what is it that we have accomplished? Did we sulk and were we depressed the whole time? Were we really anxious? Or did we try to do our best by, you know, having control a little bit more of our lives? And so an internal locus of control is going to be more powerful than an external locus of control. Okay, and then we have this, remember the sad dog. Okay, so this is called learned helplessness. Does anyone remember who the guy was who invented this or came up with it? It is going to be Martin Seligman, and he was all about positive psychology. So the whole experiment was the fact that they put these dogs in a crate and kept shocking them without any sort of escape. And then the next time they put the same dogs back into the same crate, but they opened up all the doors. So they all assumed that if we shock the dogs, then the dogs would just then escape. But because the dogs had learned to become helpless, they end up not running away. So a lot of times hopelessness and passive resignation of a human or an animal or human learns when unable to avoid repeated aversive events. So if you're constantly just being hit over and over again, it is really easy for us to have a sense of learned helplessness and just kind of give up. And oftentimes that can be really difficult because that mental mindset can then make us more susceptible to depression. So hopefully none of us are there. And if you ever end up getting there, make sure you reach out for help. This can also be something like grades. So let's say you are in a class and you didn't get the grade that you wanted, and even though you keep studying, you're not getting the grade you want. At some point, some of us might just give up and say, oh, well, I'm just going to fail this class or take it in summer school. So then that actually would be learned helplessness. Okay, then we have self-serving bias, which is the readiness to perceive oneself as more favorable. So a lot of times when we ask people, you know, how moral and ethical do you think you are? Most people are probably going to score themselves higher. Kind of more, sorry, my dogs, every time. Stop. Okay, I'm almost done, guys. Okay, they are going to see themselves as more ethical because we want to see ourselves more favorable. So this can also be an attractiveness level as well. Okay, last one. Sorry, my dogs are insane. Okay, last one is the spotlight effect. So a lot of times we get nervous when we're in the spotlight because we think everyone's looking at us, but who is everyone really paying attention to? It's themselves, right? So when we are in front of a big group or during a class presentation, we might get stage fright or we might get nervous with public speaking. But really, when you look around the room, a lot of times your peers are either not paying attention, which is sad, or they're too busy in their own heads, or they're like nervous for them being next. So a lot of times the spotlight isn't even on you, but a lot of times we think it is. Alrighty, my dears, that was a very long lecture. I'm sorry for all the distractions. I missed you guys, and we are going to start doing more Zooms and then FRQ practicing together. But we're just a few short weeks away. I am proud of you guys, and stay healthy and stay safe. See you guys soon. Bye.